So I think I have arguably one of the strongest and most survivable builds in all of Banishers Ghost of New Eden. This build have the ability to do thousands, yes, thousands of headshot damage, and in a lot of cases drop even the strongest of enemies in less than 2 shots. On top of this, you have very high HP and tons of damage reduction, making it near impossible for you to die. Oh, and I forgot to mention your range, so before anything even gets to you, they're long dead. Let me show you how to make my one-shot deck stacker hunter build. So let's quickly go over the gear, and I'm going to try to show you exactly where they're located so they'll be playing on screen whenever it comes to it. I do want to be clear though, when it comes to my first piece, the gunner battle gear and the weapon, I don't recall where I actually found them because at the time I think my OBS crashed and it corrupted the data, so I couldn't record it. But the gunner battle gear is going to be our chest piece that we're going to be using. This is our main outfit, and what it does is rifle damage is increased up to 50% at long ranges. So basically whenever you're shooting at things from a longer distance, you'll notice that I hit things for like 1500 damage. This really helps to give you that increased damage. I think you can find this in the Hunter's Lodge, like the Hunter's area. Again, my footage got corrupted for this item, so, you know, it is what it is. One thing to note about this gear, though, is it is Dexterity Vitality. We're a dex stacking build. We want a lot of dex. As you can see here on the right, we have 177 dex. And this is going to increase our rifle damage, and that's why we're stacking dex so heavily. We also have a ton of vitality as well because we want to be defensive, and I know this says we have 18 and 15 defense on this resistance, but we actually have significantly more when we go into the evolutions. But again, our first piece is going to be the gunner battle gear. You can find it in the hunter's camp area. One of the vendors sell it. Moving on, we have the double fangs. Now on screen I'll have it playing, but the reason we're going with double fangs is because it's going to enable your rifle a little bit more. Defeating an enemy with a melee attack increases the damage of your next rifle shot by 100%. Now, I haven't found a real weapon that gives rifles as much as double fangs have, so this is going to be the best option. Also, it gives 26 dex as well as 40 vitality, making you again even more tankier. For our rifle, we have Opportunist, and I have maxed this one out as well. And what this one does is rifle damage is increased by 100% against wounded enemies. So your initial shot won't do as much damage. It will, believe it or not, it actually will because of other things, but once things get wounded, they will 100% die because this does almost double damage. This is one that is really good early on. This is the other item. I don't know exactly where I got it, but I believe it's right before you get to the second town. So if I'm not mistaken, I got it somewhere in the Harrows area, this area where you're gonna do it. Again, sorry about not being able to show you guys, but this is where the rifle was. I'm going to show you a few other options that you can use. You'll find a lot of rifles as you go through the game, but for other options that you can use the Swift Shot. I found this one relatively early as well. Again, didn't record it because it got corrupted, but this is another good option. If you're really good at hitting headshots, this is going to really enable you to do a lot of follow-up attacks. The reason why I use Opportunist a lot earlier, because more times than not things died because of the combo with the chest gear, and once they're wounded you just shoot them one more time and they die, and it just felt better. In the later game when you're fighting off against much stronger enemies and you're doing like some of the challenge events, Swift Shot in theory could be better. Haven't tested, but it's a really good option. So moving on to our decoration, and this one can be found in Mount Pleasant in the snow region town. And what this one does is whenever you hit an enemy with the rifle stock, it reloads the rifle, and the weak spot damage is increased by 20% rather. And again, it has dex and vitality, again giving you a lot more extra damage. This is going to actually synergize really well with your other evolution that we're going to go over in just a second. And alongside this, you can find Hawkeye in the same area. It's not in the town, but it's in the same area. And this one is going to give you the defeating enemy with a manifestation, increase the damage of your next rifle shot by 100%. And again, this isn't that important to the overall build. It has dex, it has vitality, so that's important, and it does give you some extra ways of getting damage to your rifle shot. But yeah, this one's really good. You're gonna find this in a cursed chest. I'll show it on screen now as well, just so you can see it. Moving on to our wristband, this one has no value at all. I'm just using it because I haven't found anything better. This one's going to be interchangeable depending on what you want to do. So yeah, just kind of move on past this one. For our amulet, we have the Wind Chimes. What the Wind Chime does is damage dealt by Red and Antea is increased by 30%, but health points gained are reduced by 50%. In the grand scheme of things, this doesn't really matter overall because you don't take much damage. You're playing from range and you're pretty much evading attacks at all times. So Wind chimes don't really matter in terms of the negative, but you get 30% increased damage for simply having it on. So a massive, massive good one. Finally, to the Soldier of Fortune, this is our Bane Rings. And this one does rifle shots consume 25 spirit points to deal 50% increased damage. We're going to go over the evolution next, but the thing is, you're not going to be using a lot of your spirit points because this build is very focused on red being active and just shooting everything. And you want to spend those spirit points on this specifically, so you're doing those big damage numbers, and that's why I can hit like 1500 fairly easy on just like a normal shot. Moving on to our evolutions, and there are a lot to do here, so let's go over it. So for our first evolution, we're going to get Pockets of Holding for the extra decoration charges. Not too important because we're not taking much damage, but worth picking up. And then we get Powder Kegs, Heavy Charge triggers like AoE. Again, just something we have to take early on just to get some extra benefits. Not that important to the build. Over on the right side, we have Unrelenting. Light attacks will deal increased damage and keep stacking as you attack. And then we have Resilience, which is actually one of the bigger things for the build. Damage dealt by red is increased up to 15% the higher the health points of your health gauge. And this one is going to be one of the ways to enable your damage because you want red to stay healthy as possible. Your range, you're going to be dashing around anyway. So again, 15% increased damage, really good. Moving on to the Leap Tree, and we have Sixth Sense. Parrying restores 15 spirit points. This is good to help sustain so that you can take advantage of that one that gives you your, I believe it's your Bane Ring, that gives you extra damage whenever you spirit. Very good. And then over here, we want to take Barrier. Defeating an enemy with a heavy attack reduces the damage taken. In the event that you finish and hit things with your weapon, again, you're going to get a little bit of extra defense. Moving on up here, we have Initiator, and Initiator is really good. Damage dealt by red is increased by 30% against full health enemies. And again, this is why whenever we actually shoot things that are full health, we absolutely murder them because we get way more damage. Super stacking, a lot of extra damage when you hit the weak points on top of that. But yeah, really good. Over here we have Spectral Ignition. This just does AoE damage. I try to have anything melee related do AoE damage just to stagger things to give you the ability to kind of like move out the way, and that's the purpose of this. Don't do anything here, but take whatever you like. Moving over to Outburst area, we have Spirit Restock. Whenever Antea hits, you'll reload the weapon automatically, which helps you with reloading. And the next hit with the rifle will increase the damage by 25%, so you're dealing a lot more damage. Really good to the build. Next we have Death Bow. This is gonna just help you do like a perfect attack swap thingy with Antea. This one's not very important, but you know, just in the event that you have this thing happening, because you are gonna do like rifle butt attacks, you could do this. I don't really recommend it, but you can get this. One thing I do want to talk about on this area is this bottom left here, and Helping Hand is okay. Weak spots will reduce manifestation cooldowns by 25%. I don't love it for my build because it does counteract some things. If you want to go a little bit more hybrid with your manifestations, you can, but I don't think it's that good. And this one is, in my opinion, a bait. Bane Powder Bullets. This is going to reduce your weak spot damage while increasing your Banisher gauge. You're not really trying to use your Banisher's gauge as much, and the weak spot damage reduction is not worth it in my opinion, because you're gonna not really rely on the Banisher gauge that much. I don't think this is a big enough increase to justify it. Moving on to our other side, we have Protected Shooter. Defeating an enemy with rifle reduces the next damage taken by 90%. This is another reason why you're defensive. If you're shooting and killing things, anytime you do somehow slip up and get hit, it's going to reduce the damage by 90%. Super big. Over here we have Banishing Shot. Shooting with the rifle while the Banisher gauge is full will increase the damage by 300% but consume all Banisher points. This is going to be just not super reliable, but an extra huge burst of damage. This is the only thing you're taking in this section, but yeah, it's really contributing to your rifle damage. Moving on to our Ensnare Tree, let's talk about Waiting Stance. Damage taken is reduced by 5% for each manifestation and cooldown. So again, we ideally want our cooldown to be longer, and that's why I said in the previous one you don't really want cooldown reduced, because this is going to increase our damage. Well, it's going to reduce our damage taken, and it's really synergistic to the build because you're going to use all your skills and then have some defense. And then we have Perfectionist, and this one's super big, one of the biggest ones in this entire build. Weak spot damage hits with the rifle increased by 50%, but body shots are reduced by 30%. We're aiming for heads, we're aiming for weak spots. This is going to give you 50% increased damage, a lot more damage, and that's why our big shots are like 1,500. It's really great. Over here we have Cold Pack. Hitting an enemy with the rifle stock attack increases the damage of the next rifle shot by 30%, which synergizes really well with our Zen Mine, which again we're going to be hitting with the stock to reload. So this is a really solid synergy that works really well, and yeah, it just helps you out with distancing and things like that. Don't take anything else here, so let's move on. We got Crushing Leap just so we can get this skill. Sharpshooter. Defeating an enemy with the rifle increases the damage of the next rifle shot by 50%. So this is why I said that in theory you could go with Swift Shot here, because this synergizes really well with Swift Shot, because you're going to be hitting, killing things, hitting weak spots, move on to the next guy, hit weak spot, so on and so forth. But yeah, really good one. Definitely good for damage. Over here we have Reflux. Damage dealt by red is increased by 20%, but you take 10% more damage. We have things to offset this, so it's not a big deal, but 20% raw damage is just massive. Finally, onto the fusion tree, and this one is actually pretty big as well. Let's talk about Patient. Damage taken is reduced by 15%, but manifestation cooldowns are increased by 30%. This super synergizes really well with waiting stance, because if the manifestations on cooldown is going to give you way more extra defense, and this one's going to give you another flat 15%, so a lot of extra defense. And this is why you're not really worried, because you have a lot of vitality, you have a lot of defense, and it's just hard for you to die, and you're evading all the time, so it's really good. Moving on, we have Crack Shot. This one's pretty big for AoE. Rifle shots are area of effect physical damage, so you have AoE on this, just a massive bazooka that just blows everything up. Really powerful, probably one of the most important parts of the build, because you just can deal with mobs really easy with this. Moving on to the area over here, and we have Devil's Deal. What this does is increase points gained, health points gained, spirit points gained, as well as Banisher points gained, but you take 25% more damage. You're tanky, so it doesn't really matter too much, but again, you're gonna refill your Banisher gauge really well. You're gonna get your spirit gauge to refill fairly well as well, so that you can continue to do your big damage with those two mechanics in the game. And you get more HP. It's really good because you do stack a lot of vitality, so your health is really high. Over here we have Last Straw. Damage dealt by Antea increased for 15% for each manifestation and cooldown. You're gonna have long cooldowns, so it's really good. And then we have Unity, and this one's actually pretty big too for the build. Team Assist. Weak spot hits with the rifle triggers a punch that ignores resistances and knocks down the targeted enemy. This actually extends to bosses, by the way, so bosses actually get knocked to the ground, or like the really big ones, like the main story ones, this won't affect them obviously. But for like the elites and stuff like that, they will get staggered, they'll get knocked down sometimes. The big fatty ones, they'll get knocked down and knocked out of their charge and everything, so it's really big. Finally, we have Bane, and Bane is gonna just give you some extra damage on your heavy attack when you shoot with the rifle. Not really that important, but this is extra points we had, so we put it in something. The only thing we don't have is we need to do 2 more investigations for Antea. I would get Entangled to ensnare 1 more additional time for the extra projectile. This is because, you know, the blue guys that can be kind of evasive, or purple, whatever color it is, you want to ensnare them so that you can actually like shoot them, and this is going to help with that. And then down here you want Web Weaving, and this is going to apply ensnare on enemies after you kill an enemy that's ensnared. So this is really good for just holding things down so you can actually kill them with your rifle shots. There you have it, guys. That is my one-shot dexterity stacking rifle build. This build is very tanky, very powerful, very hard to deal with. You can do tons of damage, and in the right circumstances you can get upwards of 3 to 4k damage. It's an absolutely powerhouse build that can carry you through the entire game and absolutely murder bosses very easily. With that said, I really thank you guys for being here and checking out the video as well as the channel. If you do like this kind of content, consider leaving me a like so this video gets out to other players who may like this build. Leave me a suggestion for builds you'd like to see down below in the comments, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video very soon. Later.